previously we converted a decimal into a percent and then a percent into a decimal. But what if you don't have a decimal number? What if you have a fraction? How do you convert a fraction into a percent? Well, you can use this proportion, and I would highly suggest that you memorize this proportion, but I'm hoping it's not going to be very hard for you to memorize. Because what we're saying is we're going to take our fraction a over b, and we're going to turn it into a percent. And this n over 100, that was the definition of percent, right? So you're saying, I want my fraction to equal a percent. So you just set it up that way. It's a really simple proportion. And then hopefully you remember how to solve proportions. We cross multiply to solve for n. And that will tell you what the percentage is. And the nice thing about this is you don't have to deal with a lot of decimal numbers. And the answer you get for n, it is the answer. It's the percentage. You don't have to move any decimals. So if we wanted to convert 2/5 into a percent, you would just say, well, I want 2/5 to equal n over 100. Right? And then we're going to cross multiply. I'll do my diagonal that has the n first, and then my other diagonal. So what we're going to have is 5n equals, the other diagonal would be 200. You multiply in the diagonals. And then to solve this, we would just divide both sides by 5. A nice simple little solve there. And when you divide 200 by 5, you get 40. And so then that tells us that 2/5 as a percent is 40%. See, the answer that you get for n, you literally just slap a percent sign on it. You don't have to mess with decimals. So 2/5, if you want to keep it as a fraction, you can set it equal to n over 100 and then solve the proportion. I mean, I guess you could put 2/5 in the calculator and get a decimal, but the point of this is to not have to use decimals at all, that you can convert to a percentage from a fraction without having to go through decimals. I guess that's the point of this. So if I wanted to convert 9 over 40 into a percent, I would take 9 over 40 and I would set it equal to my percent definition. And then I'm going to take my diagonals. Do the one with the variable first. That's going to be 40n equals 900. And then I'm going to divide by 40. And when you take 900 and you divide by 40, you get 22.5. And remember, the answer that you get, you just slap a percent sign on it. So it's 22.5%. So this one ends up with a decimal in there because you have 0.5%. But if a decimal shows up, it would show up here at the end. It shouldn't be showing up in the work of the proportion. So that's a very simple way you can turn a fraction into a percentage. So then let's kind of convert all three. I've got a percent column, a decimal column, and a fraction column. So I've got 3 different examples. So it doesn't matter which one you start with. And it doesn't matter which direction you go. I think I'm going to go maybe row by row. So I'll start with the first one. If 44 is the percent, and I want to convert that percent into a decimal, I need to move my decimal either 2 places to the left or 2 places to the right. And if you want to convert a percent to a decimal, you move 2 places to the left. So my decimal is normally here. If I move it 2 places to the left, it makes the decimal 0.44. So 0.44 is equivalent to 44%. And then how do you make this decimal a fraction? You just say it. This is 44 hundredths. So 44 hundredths. Or what is percent per hundred? So 44 over 100. You can get there from the percent also. Now, you can reduce this fraction. If you reduce it, it would end up being 11 out of 25. The only reason I'm going to leave it 44 over 100 here is because then the 3 lines, or the 3 little cells here in my table, they make sense. 11 over 25 doesn't really remind me of a 0.44 or a 44%. So start with the over 100 fraction and then reduce it if, like in the homework, if they want you to reduce it. All right, next row, 0.5, that's my decimal. To go from a decimal to a percent, you'd have to move your decimal 2 places to the right. So if I move this decimal 2 places to the right, I'm going to have to add a 0. And what is a half? It's 50%. And what is this decimal? That's 5/10. Or it's 1/2, right? This one is almost like so easy it's hard. It's easy to overthink. 50% is saying the same thing as 0.5, which is saying the same thing as 1/2. Like they all mean half of the whole. So when I start with a decimal, I can either get the percent first or the fraction. It doesn't matter which direction you go. Now let's look at the fraction. Okay, so the fraction is 3/8. If I want to write it as a percent, I can. Really, the easiest way to turn this fraction into a decimal is really just to use a calculator. Or you could sit there and use long division. So if you were doing this with like younger kids, you would use long division. But I'm just going to take 3 and divide it by 8 to get a decimal on my calculator, and it's 0.375. 0.375. And then if I want to convert this decimal into a percent, I have to move my decimal 2 places to the right. So that would become 37.5%. I guess if you wanted, you could take 3/8 and set it against n over 100, and you could get the percentage by solving this if you wanted to, and you'll get 37.5 as your answer if you cross multiply and solve. But you kind of have some options, and y'all are allowed to use a calculator, so if you want to convert that to a decimal with a calculator, that's perfectly fine. But this is definitely something you need to know, is how to convert between these 3 languages: percent language, decimal language, and fraction language.